Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 91. Thank you for tuning into the podcast through our website, rockisgeorge.com, on our YouTube page, at rockisgeorge, at theloudest.com on the planet, knac.com, or on one of the many podcasting streaming apps available. My guest for this episode is STEFAN BLOMQVIST of the Swedish rock and roll band Black Paisley. Now, normally the Swedish bands that I come across are considered AOR or melodic rock, but Black Paisley, a little different, sort of old school classic rock, mixed with a little modern and maybe even like a little country twang. Now, their latest album, Human Nature, came out on November 25th. Fantastic album. I enjoyed it from beginning to end, and it made me want to reach out to the band and find out more about them. So here is vocalist STEFAN BLOMQVIST of the band Black Paisley. If I knew absolutely nothing about Black Paisley, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Wow. I think it's inspired by, what we grew up with, back in the 80s and the 90s. It's a classic rock, as a platform. And then, we've been trying to add some of, little bit of more modern production to it, and then perhaps a little bit of a tweaky songwriting also on top of it, but you will recognize guitar based chorus heavy type of rock, not too heavy, but very melodic. That's and if you should compare it with something, it's I usually take bands like Whitesnake or Thunder or Foreigner. It's on the softer side of hard rock.
Absolutely, and that can be heard distinctly on your upcoming album, Human Nature. It comes out on November 25th. Let's talk a little bit about the songs that you've put forward before the album's release. I assume that you're the major lyricist for the band.
That's true.
Talk me a little bit about Set Me on Fire.
Set Me on Fire was an interesting one. It was actually a collaboration that we managed to do together with MIKE FRASER, being a big idol for us, Canadian mixer, producer, worked with many of the big ones, and recently with AC/DC. We reached out to him during the pandemic and managed to get him on board. He felt that this music was down his alley, from his background, and so we did 2 songs on the new album together with him, and then Set Me on Fire is one of them. Great experience, a bit of a childhood dream to just come to the studios and to work with him and to hear the stories. It's been working with Aerosmith and Scorpions and many of the big ones, Aerosmith and so forth. The song, very chorus driven, melodic rock song, a little bit of a sing-along type of live song. It's the opening track on the album, trying to set the scene a bit, a little bit on the radio side of things, I would say, from a style perspective.
Was it important for you to work with someone like Mike Fraser because he kind of molded the scene that you're kind of basing your band's music sound on?
Yeah, exactly. It was obviously, a little of a bit of a dream come true, because, you've been listening and really been inspired by a lot of the stuff that he has done over the years. And he's been involved in more things than that. Everybody knows about Bob Rock, but there was a whole team around him back in the days in Little Mountain Studios and so forth. And then now these guys are the next generation, right? And he's very senior now, so now he has his next generation coming up. But anyway, yeah, it all comes down to just for us trying to see what that kind of professional type of mixer could add to to the mix, and it was a great experience. I think that we developed, and you know, he took the band to another level. And the way we did it is that we kind of started with the 2 songs with him, and from a budget perspective, we couldn't work with him from the full record this time. So we brought back those 2 songs, and that became kind of a template for the team we have back in Sweden. So the rest of the 10 songs are made with the Swedish local team, but with a template of Fraser's, you know, style and sound. So I think it took us to another level that we haven't been on before, and on top of all of the extras you get from this type of cooperation with the stories and just being there, it was a great way for us to develop the sound.
Another song that's out on YouTube right now that I enjoy, it's one of my favorites, is Promises. If you want to talk a little bit about that song.
Exactly. That's the last single we have. It's also, you know, pretty radio friendly type of song. It has an interesting story because, you know, the way these songs develop during, you know, songwriting and production is funny, because this song really started off like a more of a Holy Diver type of a driven pulse in it, and then it became more and more commercial, and now I would say it's more of a radio friendly type of song, but it's one of my favorites also. I think it's, you know, it's both catchy and but still rocky, so I like it too.
And the third single you have out is Mojo. That appears to be quite popular, actually.
That seems to be one of the big, you know, I wouldn't call it hits on our level, but if you're looking on relative terms, it has gotten a lot of you know, playlists, ads, and so forth. That's a bit of a different one, right? It's a little bit more on the southern rock style, you know, leaning towards like the Allman Brothers, Lynyrd Skynyrd type of heritage. I really enjoy that, and if you hear, you know, when we did our first record back in 2017, we had a little bit of that with the contra style coming into some of the songs, so we brought that back in this southern style rock. It's a mid-tempo song, you know, but it's as you say, it's been really popular, and we actually, that's one of the songs that ended up on Apple's editorial playlist last week, which for us being an independent band means a lot, right? You know, that really drives, you know, the traffic, and then you get shares and so forth, and you really get the music out there, you know, with these type of playlists. So it's no, it's a good song, and as you say, quite popular.
And you're releasing Human Nature independently. Do you do pretty much everything independently, like booking and managing and advertising and all that?
We've been, you know, from the start, we were, you know, pure independent, and you know, it's been a journey, and over, you know, the band's been, you know, together for like 6 years, and then, you know, over the years we gradually grown the fan base, and we've also, you know, grown the partnerships around it. So now we still have our own label, but it's a corporation now, so it's, you know, a little bit more structured, and so we bring all the money in from streams and live shows into this company, and then we take this, you know, funding to record and to release new albums. So it's a small venture in itself. Nowadays we have a booker who is helping us with, you know, festival bookings, mainly here in the Nordic area, Northern Europe, and then we also have a professional distributor nowadays with Sound Pollution, which in their turn are having a network of distributors. So you will be able to have the record in your local shop in you know, both overseas in the US and in Europe and Japan. So that's a big step for us also, you know, trying to, you know, you gradually get into the network and the ecosystem from you know, you're pretty sidelined as an independent from the start, but then you know, gradually move your way in, and with the growing fan base, you know, it's business for our partners also, which is, you know, needs to be.
Are you happy with this? Are you happy with this independent stream that you set up, or do you still shop your music to labels?
It's a difficult question, because I kind of enjoy the freedom of being independent. You know, we've been able to keep a pretty fast pace. We've done 4 records in like 6 years. So we are really able to do what we want when we want it, etc. So we could release 6 singles even if people think it's a little bit much and so forth. So there are positive things with being independent. Having said that, you don't get the reach by far if you compare us to being on at least a medium-sized label to a larger label, because the way it works today, if you're into that type of ecosystem, you get access to radio plugging and you get access to other type of marketing channels and so forth. So obviously it would be a natural step for us to come into that, but again, so far so good, and I think that there's been some positive parts of being independent so far. But I wouldn't mind, if I put it that way, that we get a little bit more help for perhaps next record.
So one of the things I noticed over your album cover artwork is sort of this homage to the Day of the Dead in Mexico, the skull imagery and stuff like that. What sort of drew you to having that connection with the band?
It's funny, right? Because it's really pretty much a coincidence how that started. I was in San Francisco on vacation, and I went into one of these shops, and they had this Mexican, sugar skull, in true size with all of the engravings, etc. Really nice one. Actually, the one that's photographs on the first album was bought back there. And that made me look into and start to Google and do some research on the whole Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead concept, the Mexican way to celebrate Halloween and so forth. And it's so the whole artwork around it, the way they do the face paint on the girls and the way they dress, a lot of color, etc. And all of these really nice handcrafts around it. So we gradually, used more and more of that artwork. So on the album covers, you will see a story over these 4 albums, from the small flower growing out from the skull, and then it became a baby, and it was a rambler on the 3rd album, and now it's becoming more of a, a little bit of a dividend human nature creature, whatever. And so that's one story, and then we have all of these. Like Catrinas and the Mexican face painted women in the videos and on the covers of the singles, etc. So it's becoming a story of itself, and also a bit of the trademark actually for Black Paisley.
You have a record release party coming out when the album comes out. You have the record release party coming in Stockholm. So what can what do you expect to do at this event?
Nobody's funny, right? And we've done this a couple of times before, and it's it started off like a friends and family event, but now it's like a couple of 200-300 people coming, so it's becoming bigger. But it's a fun way to collect everybody that's been involved in the project, and a little bit business people and people from the distributor and obviously fans. So it's a great way for us to celebrate the album and actually get out and play some of the songs. So what we will do, we'll have a little bit of an interview session, and we will have Mike Fraser joining, and we will have a little bit of the team around it, and then so it will be the story behind the album, and we will play almost a full album. I think we'll play like 8 songs or something. So it's a good way for us to celebrate the album. It's a lot of hard work, and actually to get to meet people also. People are still in a bit of post-pandemic mode here. So it's not, even if the concerts have started up, it's not as much events as it used to be. So people are a little bit dried out. So I think it will be, hopefully it will be a nice event. We're really looking forward to it. So it's on Saturday.
Yeah. And you played a couple of festivals throughout the summer. One of them was I'm going to try not to butcher this name, Skogradret.
Yeah.
Festival.
It means in Sweden, it's the part in the wood.
Okay.
In the woods. And that's kind of true. So it's really, you know, in the middle of nowhere. You drive 2 hours south of Stockholm, and it's in the forest. But it's really popular. I think it's the second biggest, you know, hard rock festival in Sweden, at least. Really well, coordinated and arranged. So it's a great place to be. So we were able to play there, which was nice. You know, Europe and Michael Schenker headlined. It was, for us, is, you know, it's both, a little bit of both. It's obviously great to get out and play, but for me, you know, being a fan of a lot of the headliners is like, you know, is the whole thing with, you know, meeting these people backstage and, you know, sitting down, have a beer, and hear their stories. It's like, that's fabulous, you know. I had lunch there in Swedish meatballs with Robin McAuley, right? It's like, and Danko Jones sat next to me. So it's like, and these guys, they don't get out in the crowd, you know, to look at the other bands. They're just hanging backstage for hours and hours and hours. It's a lot of waiting for little, you know, small amounts of playing. So you know, half of the fun was to meet all of these guys. It's for me, being, you know, again, a late bloomer coming into this environment, you know, at this stage of life, it's fantastic to meet these guys, and they're all very humble. You know, I'm really surprised the way they share their experiences and so forth. It's no competition whatsoever. It's a really good atmosphere. At least at those festivals that we played, it was really great atmosphere backstage.
It's great that you had that opportunity, because usually the bands down at the bottom don't really get to mingle with the bands at the top.
True, and I think this was, you know, one of the advantages of this small festival, right? It, you know, backstage it was an old school, and every band had an old classroom, which was our loge, and then you know, we had, you know, all had lunch and dinner in the cantina, so it was really, you know, it was very low key for everybody, right? Not everybody was there, you know, but you know, if you wanted to, you had opportunities to meet them. So that was great.
What are your plans going forward as far as live shows after the release party?
I think, you know, hopefully we will try to get, you know, a similar type of scheme for this summer, and we're planning a smaller club tour now in the winter time, which will be like in the Nordics, you know, Sweden and Norway. Then we have a gig in late springtime in Germany, which is actually our first international, you know, or outside the Nordics gig. We'll play one of the indoor festivals there. And then there will be some more, you know, festivals popping up during the summer. So again, we're not a touring band in the sense that we could be away, you know, for 2 months, because everybody has other jobs and stuff like that. So we have a little bit constraints on that. So it's more like a weekend warrior type of setup, and then the summer, of course, where people are off, typically on vacation. So we try to fill these periods, you know, with as much gigs as we can, and get out to play. You know, we're playing some of the cruises also, you know, like the cruises you have in the US. We have similar ones here in Sweden. They're really popular, and also typically really nice events, both for the bands to meet and all of the crowds. So it's good fun. So the plans is, and hopefully, you know, we will be able to launch some of the gigs coming up here in the next coming weeks and so.
Excellent. The name of the band, Black Paisley, was also the name of Richie Sambora's Fender guitar in the 80s, and you actually own a Black Paisley guitar. Was that Sambora's guitar? Or did you buy one of the replicas?
No, it's a similar one. I'll show you. Hang on. All
right.
We got it here. You know, we're rehearsing for the release party, so I got it here, but I'm supposed to see it here. But yes. You know, it's a Strat, you know, signature model that he had. I don't have exactly the same, but it's, you know, the story was that Fender, you know, did this in pink paisley in the 60s, right? You know, with George Harrison and Beatles and stuff like that. And I think they did it in blue also, blue flowers or something. So, but Sambora had a signature model in the later part of his Bon Jovi days. So it's just a fun story, right? You know, the the first couple of records were a little bit more into like that type of sound also. You will recognize some of that in the ballads and so forth. And I always liked Bon Jovi, but I in particular like Richie Sambora, which have had a little bit of a bluesier side, I think, which I think you also hear a little bit in Black Paisley, that we sometimes lean back into the blues. And Franco, which is our guitarist, he's the blues man. So he's also bringing that side of things coming in. So it's a funny story and kind of connects us with at least ballpark what we're playing. Yeah.
Have you ever had the opportunity to meet Richie Sambora?
No, not yet. That would obviously be a fantastic, next thing. But we work with Mike Fraser this time. Perhaps we work with Sambora next time. I would love to have him, guest on a couple of songs. That would be another one on the bucket list.
Well, he is available, and Bon Jovi just isn't the same without him. What do you think about that?
I agree, and I really think that the way they work together, also their voices are interconnected into a way that they don't have anymore, and you don't know what you have until it's gone, right? Cinderella quote, but it's like when they took him away, even if Phil X is great, but it's not the same. It's just something else. But I would love to see more of solo work from him. The first two solo albums he did, I think, is still amazing, right? Obviously not making the charge the same way as Bon Jovi, but from in my standpoint, or from my view, it's great stuff. It's great stuff.
Absolutely. Your band Black Paisley kind of pays homage to the classic rock of America. Is there anybody in Sweden that would be considered classic rock heroes?
Wow. It's hard to say. Obviously, we the way I've gradually grown up with this music, obviously a lot of American bands. Before that, there was a wave of bands coming from the UK, with Deep Purple and so forth. But obviously a lot of the inspiration we have is coming from the US. I think it's not that many bands from Sweden that made it, really big. Back in the days, Europe, which was like, in that, a little bit on the latest side of the hair metal moving into, they're still around. They still make decent music, and we were able to support them. We had warm up for them in one of the festivals, as I said, and they're still in very good shape. They do fantastic live shows. But I think that's the closest one, if you should find somebody in Sweden, from on that level. Then, in later days, it has become, a lot of our, sisters and brother bands here in Sweden in more into the AOR and melodic rock. There's a lot of Swedish music, being produced in this genre. So the last coming 5-6 years, it's quite a lot of bands in this area. And if you're looking at like Frontiers record, the Italian record company, they have a lot of Swedish bands on the roster. Eclipse and Wet and Wildness and smaller to medium-sized bands. Not sure if you get them much in the US.
I have probably interviewed all of them. I've definitely, I've definitely interviewed Eclipse and Degreed and
Robin,
Perfect Plan and all those guys.
Yeah, Perfect Plan is fantastic. It's funny, right? Perfect Plan is very similar to Black Paisley. Our bass player and their bass player, they used to go to school together, and then we didn't know of each other, and then all of a sudden, both bands popped up pretty much the same time. They're also former cover band. Black Paisley, we started off like a heavy metal, hard rock cover band. We were called Steph Metal at that time. I'm called Stefan, so Steph Metal, not Death Metal, but Steph Metal. And then they did the Europe covers. So Kent Hill is a fantastic imitator of Joey Tempest, if you didn't know. But But they're in the same segment, perhaps a little bit more foreigner type of softer. They're a bit softer than us, but still, close by. We've been doing some shows with them here in the Nordics. So it's good fun. Good fun.
Awesome. Now, are you the same Stefan Blomqvist that owns the shot put record in the men's 40 in Sweden?
No, it's not. Oh,
Okay.
that's another one. Yeah, that's another one.
That would have been a great story, actually.
That would have been a great story. And there's another Stefan Blomqvist who used to play, who is a piano player, and he played with all of the big names in pop in the 70s and the 80s. And the funny thing is, when you register your songs, from a mechanical type of license, the first record that ended up in his pocket. So it's like, that's Stefan Blomqvist, he put it on that. So it took me a while just to say, well, don't we have any place here? And then it turns out they were in another Stefan's license. So it's good and bad. It's not that common name, to be honest. But there seems to be a lot of musicians with.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Stefan. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the Rock is George podcast. The new album is Human Nature. It comes out on November 25th. It's self-released. Sounds great, and I wish you the best of luck on it.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having us on the show. Appreciate that a lot.
Once again, I want to thank Stefan Blomqvist of Black Paisley for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Human Nature. Stream it on your favorite music streaming app. If you like what you hear, go out and buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Black Paisley, head over to their official website, blackpaisley.se. I also want to thank David at Freeman Promotions for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. I'll see you again soon.